Now, I'm going to start with a joke, and sometimes jokes don't work well, but I think this is good for the context. Uh, I believe that, I strongly believe that there are a lot of smart people out there. Unfortunately, a lot of them are asymptomatic. So hopefully, analytics will help us figuring out those asymptomatic people and making them better. Right? On jokes apart, the topic for today is business analytics, facilitating organizations to adapt to COVID-19 pandemic. And we have a great set of leaders who are doing just that. Okay, and so we're going to hear a lot from them. I'm going to give you a little bit of my perspective on how I see this pandemic. The first thing is, I think from as an educator, it's great that people are getting to understand exponential distributions are, what doubling rate means. It shows some interest which will help me in the classroom. The second thing it also shows is that models are fallible. And we're learning that the way people work is they try a lot. They experiment, they try to figure out what's going on, and then we settle on what is the best model. And that I think is a good thing for firms to emulate as well. Get to this culture of experimenting and learning. Now, the third part is that it has shown the power of analytics, right? And I think that's a great thing. Okay, and there's no better set of people to help us understand what's going on than the panelists we have here. So I'll give you a brief introduction of the panelists. Like I said, it's a long resume, so we won't have the time to go through all of that. But I will give you the brief highlights. Our first panelist is Aashish Chandra. He's the global CTO at TCS. He's in charge of retail, CPG, travel, transportation, and hospitality. He's a graduate of Stanford GSB. He has more than 20 years of experience in digital operating models, transformations, and developing scalable platforms for online mobile data analytics and digital platforms. He is a recipient of a lot of awards. He's won the Silicon Valley 40 Under 40 award. He has won the Bay Area CIO of the Year award. So like I said, very illustrious career so far. Our second panelist is Karan. He is an alum of the ISB program. He's the founder of StatusNeo, a cloud-native technology solutions and consulting firms headquartered in the United States. Their goal has been to provide technology consulting and solutions for a lot of organizations. They work by providing clients with adequate knowledge on cloud-native expertise that covers the breadth of SaaS, DevSecOps, and AI Ops, including serverless mobile. Karan has wide experience. He's a McKinsey alum. He has done technology consulting and solutions across multiple regions and countries. So like I said, he again has a lot of things to bring to the table. Currently, he's working with large organizations based across US and the UAE to adapt to and respond to exactly the times that we're witnessing right now. Our next illustrious panelist is Dhanrajani. Sami is the Chief Executive Officer at AIQRATE. He's a distinguished, well-recognized analytics and data science leader. He's a visionary known for his deep knowledge, innovation, and topical understanding across all genres of analytics and data science space. So just to let you know, I'm going through Sami's book on AI and analytics, AI and businesses, accelerating business growth. It's a great read. If you've not gone through the book, I would highly recommend you to at least take a look. He also has some really nice TEDx videos. So like I said, he's a great author, columnist, blogger, 4 times TEDx speaker. He writes regularly for Forbes, Your Story, Telangana Today, Business World, and he blogs a lot about AI strategy and consulting spectrums. Our last panelist is Sandeep Kumar Sharma. He is the Deputy Chief Technology Officer and Managing Director in the Strategy and Analytics practice at Deloitte Consulting. He has a PhD in real-time analytics. He's a data scientist who has more than 23 years of global experience. He's focusing on the future of analytics, AI, digital workforce, and data modernization programs. He's also won a lot of awards. He has won the Global Innovative Solution Award by Informatica Marketplace, Global Best Next Generation Architecture Award. He's also published in leading journals. So it's like a nice blend of industry and academics. As a Deputy Chief Technology Officer in his current role, he's building the ecosystem of innovation, top down and bottom up within Deloitte, again, jointly with academia as well. So he is in charge, or he's working on developing Deloitte's vision and messaging for technology services and to identify and indicate key technology trends that are affecting Deloitte's businesses and helping shape the strategy for Deloitte's new and existing services and offerings. So that's a quick summary of all our panelists. Like I said, they have really long resume lists, great resume lists, and I would encourage you all to check out their files. All right, so getting back to our discussion, so just a little bit of housekeeping. So there are a lot of participants in this session. So what I'm going to do is I will pose a few questions initially to all the panelists, and they will answer these questions sequentially. And then I'll open the floor to the participants, to the rest of the participants. And I will moderate the questions. So I'm going to apologize in advance if you're not able to get to your question in particular. Right? What we will also do is once the webinar is over, we will create a document that summarizes the discussion we've had. And then we will post it up, or we will send it to you through email so that you can have a look at what was discussed and the questions that were there. And in that, if there are some questions which were asked by a lot of people and we couldn't get to it, I will try answering those questions or providing answers to those questions and send it back. So if you have questions, please use the Q&A button, but please hold on till we get to that part of the discussion. So with that, let's get started. So the first question I have, and let's start with Aashish, is to look at how analytics is helping combat the COVID-19 pandemic in general. So use cases, examples that just showcase the power of analytics. Aashish, all yours.
Thanks, Madhu. Thanks for having me, guys. My team and I were just having a discussion about coronavirus. And so the team is based globally. So got a few folks in US, a few folks in Nordic region, UK, Europe area, as well as in Asia Pacific. And it's such a different variety. When you look at it, I think the few things that come to mind, one is the mortality rate. Different regions have different mortality rates. When you look at West, US in particular, approaching 100,000 deaths, that's a staggering number. And then when you look at Hong Kong, it's got 4. So it's, of course, density is a key factor. When you look at Sweden's population, I think, is about the same as Hyderabad, which is only about 10 million people, while the area is like 700 times more than Hyderabad. So density plays a role, no doubt, but from the mortality standpoint, I think one of the key areas that the genome testing and the sequencing is doing for us, doing the analysis on them, is finding out how much the mutations, the variety and the variations of mutations exist already for the coronavirus. That's a very interesting topic because there's a lot of discussion about lockdowns as well. And it's not a very exciting topic for some because there are folks on the streets with guns who are opposing lockdowns in the US. I got some of my friends in Dallas who are saying ever since the lockdown is open up, especially in the red states. You look at Republican states, you find that they open lockdowns a lot more enthusiastically than the ones who are in blue states, like California, Democratic state. So there's a lot of resistance to lockdowns, and I think that's also a debatable topic. But when you look at Hong Kong, they haven't had any lockdowns at all, and yet they only have 4 deaths. And I think one of the things we talked about was the masks. Wearing masks is such a cultural topic. Who would have thought that that it would become a cultural issue? When you look at Taiwan, Hong Kong, people just wear masks all the time. And when you go to US, they don't want to wear masks. Ask Donald Trump. They will not wear masks no matter what. So I think that's another area. So there's all these different things we talked about during our meeting. And one of the things that we all came away with was the data. That unless you have complete data set, unless you have all the different sources of data to reach an analysis, the meaningful insights that you are looking at, you want right insights from the organization standpoint, from a professional standpoint, from a country standpoint, to combat coronavirus. But until you have all the right data sets, you really are handicapped. So one of the key things that I believe that anybody should look at as a professional is to make sure that you're getting all the right data sets towards whatever you do. And combating coronavirus, to the question you asked, I think you all know about how TCS has been combating coronavirus. In fact, in Hyderabad, we have a TCS Innovation Lab that has come up with a possible cure to coronavirus, because there are about 31 molecules that we were able to find by looking at the genome sequencing and come up with the potential cure. TCS is currently working, the Innovation Labs is currently working with CISR based in India to see if those cures can be tested. I think that's a very exciting development that's happening, and hopefully we'll have something that comes up. But there are many other, of course, efforts going on in progress right now towards combating coronavirus. And that's where the analytics can come into play, because with analytics, you could really speedify the entire process. The makeup of the virus, understanding by doing the analysis, you could understand how the virus spreads. That's a very important aspect, because you know, by looking at the genome sequencing, you can identify the makeup. You can understand how the virus spreads, the infectivity of the virus, the mortality rate. So, and considering that there are so many variations of the mutations, I think that becomes even more important.
I think that's interesting, right? You know, the partnership that you mentioned, where you know, you're working with government organizations who are specialists at what they do, and then working with them on analytics, which is what we are all good at, and then bringing that fruitful partnership, I think, is a great example of how, you know, analytics is helping COVID-19 or everybody fight COVID-19.
Absolutely. I think one of the key differentiators of people who will come out of it, and this is very tragic situation to the entire world. I think it's no doubt, but there will be folks who will find this challenge as an opportunity, and they will truly come out of it really strong and resilient. And I think leveraging ecosystem, as you mentioned, Madhu, I think leveraging ecosystem of partnerships and working with everybody else and building that capability, because 1 + 1 is really not 2, it's 11. And I think if you can bring that together and using the ecosystem, that makes a huge impact.
Okay, so can we move on to our next panelist, Karan? What do you think about this question? Like, how do you think analytics is helping combat COVID-19 in general? Do you know of any use cases or examples that showcase the power of analytics here?
Yeah, a couple of them, in fact, and you know, overall, we should draw analogies between analytics and just being number driven at the simplistic of forms in taking decisions. If you're an organization or an individual who believes in data-driven decisioning, analytics will eventually fall out as a byproduct of whatever you do. As simple an example, I'm sure most of the audiences would have heard of this New York governor's name, Andrew Cuomo, or at least as much as he has shot into limelight after COVID in the world outside of US. One simple reason for that is simple, easy to understand PowerPoint presentations in his daily updates to the world on how is New York faring in dealing with COVID-19. Now, there are enough leaders and there are enough politicians trying to solve or politicize the whole issue. But what analytics should basically do is make life easier for people to understand, digest, and take informative decisions. It's not surprisingly enough, Google has on Google Trends this guy and his simple keyword of Andrew Cuomo's slides today was quite a keyword for a very long time and still happens to be. Now, that is as simple an example of what analytics should eventually be doing, which is crunching numbers and producing insights which are there to help the larger masses. Now, this is public. Similarly, you can do so much of it on the private domain side. Eventually, it is all about decision making and how you can visualize it. There is a tool set called, or a company called Zoho, as such, which is doing quite well in their set of products, and be it CRM to multiple others. If everybody just goes online and says Zoho dashboard COVID-19, it produces a beautiful world set of dashboards. It's multiple dashboards with so many visualizations to tackling COVID-19. Now, how do you do that without the right numbers? Versus how do you put analytical features on top to derive value out of it, is where the things are going. I don't think how New York tackled the whole case or how they dealt with the rise in COVID could have had a better response if it was not for number-driven decision making or addressing the public as well in what are they doing. And these numbers weren't simple Excel sheets. Idea was to crunch it, do analytical functions, do modelings, talk about are we peaking, not peaking. This is all analytics. This is what they say. When they say, are we right on top of the curve, or where are we? This is all analytics going into understanding how are we faring. So as much as we can use these cases is what ideally you should be doing with analytics. Now, whether you are from an organization perspective, whether you are a business line, which is a CEO or a chief digital organization, then your KPIs or ways of looking at it could be different than whether you are a CIO organization, wherein you are looking at how your technology or implementations are faring with analytics. These are things to take care of. Now, one particular area or space which we are seeing a lot of traction and use is spatial analysis. While it was always useful, now this particular field has, you don't want to be doing or starting a new business or even entertaining your business till the time you can analyze in open spaces as to what is the impact of whatever you're doing. Now, whether it's optimizing billboard sites to balancing sales territories or designing supply chains, understanding and analyzing spatial data has become more critical than ever before in what regions, what places, and so forth. And that is what analytics has got to produce for everybody, individually, governments, and business-wise. So these are some very simple examples on where and how you should be looking at doing it. Now, organizations can store, enrich, analyze, visualize the data spatially, and then do decision-making. One last example that comes to mind immediately is Marks and Spencer just launched their India.com recently, 10 days back. And it already has a feature of delivery based on zones, red zone, green zone, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you're not analyzing for that, or I'll stay away from the topic of whether is the Setu app worth it, not worth it, or so forth. But idea is, as much as you use it, somebody at least wants to map you somewhere to make informed decision making happen for the rest of everybody and for you as well. That's analytics at the end of it all.
Yeah, great points, Karan. I think what COVID has done is, in some ways, it has empowered and illustrated data-backed or evidence-backed decision-making, right? And a lot of that is driven through data and analytics. And it was nice of you to, distinguish between just data and analytics, right? And there is a big difference between looking at just data summaries and then looking at analytical information, right? Models and what you get out of that. Samir, your thoughts on the same question?
So Madhu, I'll take the response, or rather provide the response in 3 dimensions. One is what CXOs and enterprises are thinking today, because it's very pivotal for us to understand where are the winds of the change. The second dimension I want to touch specific to the topic is more about what are the, I'll take out the industry cuts, what should benefit out of analytics AI, because it's subject to the pent up demand, a lot of aspects about the macro supply chains. But I'll take the horizontal piece. And third thing, what's happening in our backyard in terms of India doing to kind of arrive at a right stage of using analytics AI. And I'll use analytics AI interchangeably because this depends on the maturity of the organization.
Right.
So on the first thing, until very couple of years back, or rather recently, whenever I used to kind of meet a CXO or a kind of a head of a company, his or her usual paraphrasing, if I do in terms of a statement, used to be, we are data rich, information poor, insight starved. Can you help solve our problem? Solving the problem was something which they were dependent in terms of leveraging analytics to the core. Very recently, this whole dialogue changed to, can you help us arrive at decisions, what even Karan also mentioned. Now, one of the things which is peculiar, which I sometimes really look at with a very bizarre kind of an observation, can a digital transformation happen without analytics AI? No. The underpinning of digital transformation is all about analytics AI. Now, for the CXOs, let's look at this kind of a layer, what's happening today because of this pandemic. Reimagining the customer experience, the whole aspect of transforming the business, the third aspect of innovating product and services are all a result of analytics AI. Unless you have high powered algorithms embedded in your core operating business models, you cannot derive any decision making. Analytics, by the way, is just not visual dashboards. Let's realize an MIS expert can do that job. It's about arriving, or rather preempting the decision making, what the boards, the CXOs or business leaders can do. And that's exactly is the purpose of analytics AI. So that's one piece. Second, now if you look at the current pandemic stage, I mean, this whole, I would rather treat this thing as a black swan event. We have had multiple in the last 20, 30, 40 years. I think, of course, the magnitude this time is very large. It will have a lot of repercussions. But there are three things emerging where analytics AI is proving out to be a very, very crucial game changer. One, irrespective of the stage of the organization, global supply chains will compel organizations to look at analytics in getting infused over there, because the whole order scheduling, the whole aspect of, let's say, delivery, inventory cannot be managed unless you have a really powerful recommendation engine fueling your kind of strategic decision making. The second thing is about financial prudence. Cash flows, reserves, receivables have gone for a toss. Now, if we look at the current adoption of analytics AI, chief HR officers and CFOs are at the bottom rung in terms of analytics AI adoption. Just almost 20% of them are using from Fortune 2000 companies in terms of revamping their HR or finance. Now it's a call for them to say, look, can we get the help from analytics AI to kind of revamp? And the third thing, which is linked to the chief HR officers, is about employee well-being. Mm-hmm. Never we have faced that kind of anxiety, stress, sitting at home, which used to be a kind of a, let's say, a very good feel-good factor 2 months back. Now we are realizing we're all in a deep, if I use that word, I mean, challenge, because there is a household work, there is a kind of a work pressure, and then there is a fear of unknown. What happens to us? Because the organizations have, and that's where personas, and that's where I build that analogy that analytics alone cannot solve problems. Analytics with behavioral science. You start analyzing the personas of the employees, how they speak, how they react. If there is a lump in the throat, there is a voice modulation, the anxiety on the faces, everything has that analytics through that kind of a feature. Now, switching back to the last thing, what's happening in our backyard? India, by the way, is at the forefront of using analytics much better than any other, I would say many of the countries rather. One, open data platform has been given a kind of a nod, which means the healthcare records in India of all the hospitals will be linked, period. I think Telangana as a state has already taken a kind of a, let's say, a pivotal position on this, but now is the time to kind of link all those patient data records so that we know what exactly needs to be done. And this gets uploaded in the Arogya Setu app. Second, which is a big thing which will happen is the current migrant population, and we talked about this 28.5 million in India, there is no data. And this is the worst suffering population segment in India today, they move between states kind of a thing. Government is trying to collect that data through the various channels. Once that happens, it opens up a lot of possibilities for manufacturers, companies to look at addressing this segment through analytics, which has never been done, kind of a thing. And the third is judicial system. India has 33 million cases, almost 3 crore plus cases. 84% of these cases are more than 13 years in terms of pendency. Look at this, 13 years. And 72% of a lawyer's time gets spent on just looking at 524 sections of Indian Penal Act. This can be done by a simple text analytics engine. It's time to also revamp our engine of judicial so that any such eventuality. So these are the things which are happening through analytics. I just wanted to kind of make it brief for the kind of session, please.
No, I think these are great points. I think we stand to gain a lot in efficiency by just incorporating a simple things in the sectors that you mentioned, right? The financial sector that you mentioned is very good because, what happened in organizations before was a lot of siloing of, of roles, like finance was separate, marketing was separate, accounting, operations was separate. And I think the need going forward is to integrate these business units together, not necessarily have them as one function, but to have a platform which can integrate their activities. So, and I think analytics and data would be one of them, right? Finance can learn a lot about market demand and figuring out their numbers by just looking at the numbers that come in, both from the operation side on, products, how they're being manufactured, and then reading, data from the sales and marketing guys on what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And that can improve numbers, it can improve predicting, it can improve your forecasting, capital expenditures, inflow, all of that can be done. I think you raised some very good points on how, I think there's only things that we can improve on, and analytics has that capability to push us to that new frontier.
So just one small point, Madhu, and I'll just take it very briefly. I think it's an emergence at this stage. We've seen as a derivative of this pandemic, an emergence of analytics AI strategy within the organization. The usual pure play classic business strategy will not work. We have enough born digital kind of algorithm driven companies which have proven that the strategies over there are decided by the algorithms. Now that's a different thing. Algorithms today are getting misled because for many of the e-commerce players, what used to be a usual kind of a, let's say, inventory has now resulted into disinfectant, sanitizer, face mask. So algorithms are getting, what I say, drifted in terms of a different influencing factor, but that's a short-term thing. So I'll just stop over there.
Okay. Sandeep, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you and thanks everyone to having me. Speaking last is always easy and tough because most of the point has been covered, and tough is basically what the new flavor you can bring. So I will try my best. Analytics, before analytics, what I feel in last 3 months, when the world is going through with this whole pandemic, the right data set is available across the boundary, almost real time or near real time, to all the doctor community, to all the research community. And this helped a lot to do the faster and better analytics. And if I will divide into the 4 area, preparation, basically how long should be the lockdown, what will be the worst case scenario, how many hospitals we will require, how many ventilators we will require. All is we came to know much before the time, so we can prepare. Is all about data and analytics. We knew that we are short of ventilators, and when we are saying we means India, we are short of ventilators, and within 1 month we basically start getting more than 60-70,000 ventilator, where we have only 1.1 lakh ventilator so far across India. We start getting 60-70,000 ventilator home production in India, and this is directly or indirectly power of data and analytics. And today we are in so much safe situation that we are using only 1.8% of the ventilator in all the cases we have in India. So I will say preparation is basically analytics and data is helping. Second is diagnose. Yes, this is the situation, and where we do not have the course of treatment, that yes, Dr. Neo, okay, this is the symptoms and we have to do this kind of treatment. Many experiments are going on, and here the doctors community open the data sources, open the symptoms, basically how particular medicine is working. All these things are available from US to India, Europe, everywhere. And whenever any doctor is in dilemma that yes, this patient is behaving this way, at the same time he has these kind of other problems or medical issues, they can easily search, get the what other doctor treated, what are the symptoms, what are the success rate, and they are helping to each other. In fact, one of our client is basically the ventilator producer in US. And I think within 15 days, we start doing the analytics, not about only ventilator, but how patients are behaving, reacting with the treatment. And that basically information sharing analytics, we start giving to one state to another state and one country to another country.
Okay.
So here basically analytics comes as a picture, as Sabir rightly mentioned, that analytics is not about only visualization, but it's all about the human behavior, how it's basically reacting, how it's the pattern, so other can learn quickly and act. Third area where basically I talk about analytics is supply chain, because when world is in lockdown situation, at least essentials should reach timely with the minimal resources. You have shortage of money, you have shortage of manpower and all those things. And here the data, again, right set of data, available data, and the analytics is helping us, helping India to run the 2.5 kilometer long goods train from one place to another place and maintain the supply chain. So this is the power of availability of data and do the analytics and take the decision. And fourth, last basically place where I feel that is analytics, machine learning, data science helping lot is to get the vaccine early. I think the previous vaccine which we got is, I think 4 years or 3.5 years where we got the earliest vaccine, but here we are assuming that in 7-8 months we will get the vaccine. And here the open source of Google and Oxford University and all those things which are helping to researcher to figure out what is the weakest link of RNA of this coronavirus, so they can create the vaccine and that the weakest link enter into the virus. So these are the basically few areas where I feel that is data, right data, available data, analytics, pattern are helping humanity to fight this unknown, unseen battle.
No, I think these are great points, right? You highlighted a lot of instances in the healthcare domain where analytics has played a critical role, especially during these times. The issues on diagnosis and, if you think about vaccines, it's just incredible, right?
Yeah.
That, we have advanced so much that we can get to the release of a vaccine in December that people are talking about. And that's less than a year thing when the previous best was 3.5 to 4 years.
Right.
Agree that everybody is focusing on it, but still, it does take time. So great answers by the panel. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to invite questions from the audience, the rest of the participants. Please post your questions on Q&A. I've noticed that some of you have posted questions on the webinar chat. if you are able to post it on Q&A, I will be able to answer those questions. Now I can get the Q&A started off by asking about, one particular use case that the panel has from their organization where they've seen analytics being used, especially during this time. We talked about some of those instances, but if you can think about one use case in an organization where COVID has. Sandeep, do you want to go first this time?
So a question is basically in future or current we are using any analytics?
Use case for, you mentioned some ventilator, the
Yes.
ventilator company that
Yes.
you're working with. So some other use case that you can think of that organizations have used analysis
Right.
to adapt to the COVID-19.
Yeah, so like I mentioned about the ventilator, where no one can think earlier that how the connected ventilator, and then not the performance of ventilator, but the basically the situation of patients on the ventilator, what you are basically medicines is giving. If we will share those things real time basis from one hospital to other hospital, um, this can be help uh, greatly to patient as well as the whole healthcare and life sciences community, because you are learning very fast. This is the one use case came to us, and we basically built that solution very quickly, and now couple of hospitals in US are using it. Interestingly, at the same time, when suddenly pandemic happened, number of patients increased. A lot of healthcare provider start worrying about how they can settle the claim, because suddenly the claim has increased and all those things. So there basically a lot of analysis come in the picture. It's not about the money that basically they are worried about the money. They wanted to settle the claims as soon as possible. So there basically these two cases is coming in top of my mind where we worked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Samir, Aashish, any instances from your organization?
No, I can give you a couple. See, I already talked about how TCS has created the, shortlisted 31 new molecules that could be used for cure for coronavirus. This is based on the genome sequencing and the analytics that we did. So I talked about that earlier. I'll give you two more. One of them is that you probably noticed or may have noticed in the news that today 95% of TCS associates, that's over 4.5 lakh associates, 90% of them are currently working from home. And this is something that we announced that within next few years, we are going to make it more like a permanent feature where at least 75% of associates will work from home going forward. This is not a one-time thing. This will be a behavioral change, because there's a lot of behavioral change happening, and we are regularly monitoring and analyzing that data as to how the productivity is impacted by working from home. What are the best practices? What are the governance tools that should be employed to ensure that the productivity doesn't go down and it could be tracked and monitored? So SPWS is a platform that TCS has created, and using that platform, we are able to work from home and plan to have 75% of workforce continue working from home going forward. So that's the second use case I wanted to talk about, because it really impacts every associate. We're talking about 75% working from home. It could be game changer for the future of people who would be working from home and be able to productively do that job. It's a very important topic. The third thing I like to highlight is about the impact of coronavirus into the corporate world. We believe that this has really triggered a sense of urgency. Corporations and enterprises who were not thinking about modernizing their digital operating model or their operating model to digital are now realizing that they have to do it. There are too many enterprises that are not digital born, and they still don't have 360-degree view of the customer. I mean, that's a very basic fundamental sentiment analysis, something we were doing 8 years ago. And there are still too many retailers, too many other mainstream enterprises who don't have the proper use of data. They may have data, but they don't have insights, the meaningful insights. They're not really tapping into the analytics as they should be. We believe there's a lot of opportunity for data analytics, so a lot of opportunities for jobs and potential growth for folks who are interested to get into field. We are looking at some of our clients, and I'll give you some names. Think about cruise line, right? Cruise lines are badly impacted, right? I mean, how much they were impacted because of coronavirus. There were cruise ships hanging in the middle of nowhere. No country wanted to take them back. Think about oil. For the first time in the history, it was less than zero. So these are some industries who are significantly impacted. I'm thinking Chevron for oil. I'm thinking Carnival Cruise Lines for the cruise line. These are some of the companies who are shut down, still investing into analytics because they realize that analytics is the future. To make quick decision making, which is critical, you really have to invest today and use this as an opportunity for tomorrow and the growth of it. So there's a lot of opportunity for those who aspire to become data scientists, because we all know that, you know, and you probably know about the article that was published in Harvard Business Review as to how superpowers of the future will be defined. They will be defined by GDP, and GDP won't be gross domestic product, it will be gross data product. How much data? And I think that's a very important article to read, and I'll be happy to share the link to that article in my Twitter account for those who are interested to read it. But I think it's such an important factor to look into, being able to collect all that data. And then it's not only the countries who will be defined as superpowers, even the companies, organizations who want to prosper, they need to really look at data as a key factor, and then being able to make meaningful insights from it with analytics. So that's where the job opportunities, I think, for those who aspire to be there is so huge. I hope that covers a few cases.
Yeah, you know, your point on
analytics standpoint, there's a lot of growth coming in that space.
So sorry. Your point on employees and figuring out the work from home. We've got quite a lot of questions on it. It actually ties back to what Sameer was talking about also, right? In terms of incorporating analytics into HR related things, right? HR has been the lowest adopter in case of analytics goes, and so it ties a little bit into what Sameer was talking about. Sameer, your viewpoints on this question before I move to the audience question. And there are quite a few, so
I'll make it quick, Madhu. I think one of the cases I just want to highlight is in terms of Indian large conglomerate, what we are advising, and we are a bespoke AI consulting and strategy firm, first in its genre, because AI or analytics as a strategy is a very alien concept. But I mean, the whole pandemic situation has really kind of awakened a lot of the CXOs. And here is the remit of the problem statement we have got, and it's a three-pronged remit. One is, can you create an experience stroke command stroke decision-making center for us, which is led by artificial intelligence analytics, because the decision-making, and this large conglomerate has 7 business divisions, various industry segments they cater to, and they want to really create a kind of a command center which talks about the decision-making capabilities through analytics AI on a real-time basis. So which means the platforms, the engine, all have to be enabled. The second is they want to just disrupt everything what they have in terms of the value chains of the businesses, be it marketing, customer experience, supply chain, finance, and want to recreate, reconstruct with the usage of analytics AI, which means where exactly algorithms, what role they will play, and what decisions will come in aid of the CXO. And the third is more about all their product services, instead of depending on market research, will be created in tandem with blending of analytics and behavioral science. Because gone are the days of market research. If you look at, with all due regards, the IMRB, Nielsen's, quintiles or IQVIAs of the world, it's T plus 45 model. You don't have that kind of a space and luxury in this black swan kind of an event. So what they're trying to do, they're creating a persona of the customer, just like Facebook does. They have, for one customer, 50,000 attributes in persona. Look at that micro segmenting they're talking about. And this company then wants to build that persona with analytics to create new products and new kind of, let's say, services. So if you see, as a part of underpinning of my conversation, everything has an analytics AI component. Now the enablers over there, Madhu, could be cloud, of course, which will propel in terms of data hosting to kind of APIs, microservices built up, or it could be, let's say, other constellation of digital technologies like IoT. But within those digital, I would say, technologies, whether it's blockchain, IoT, cybersecurity, the underpinning is still analytics, an algorithm which detects and preempts the pattern through the data. So I think that will be a great, I would say, it's a great phase not only for the professionals who are into analytics, but also for the wannabe kind of a thing, that the kind of problems they will solve from here on will be absolutely large, complex, and unresolved problems for enterprises and maybe for India as well.
And I think it's a great point you're bringing out, right? I think the maturation of any technology is when it's applied to decision making. And when you see what is happening to analytics now, like you said, it's not just about analytics; it's about decision making and how can we improve decision making with this. Okay, so I'm going to move to the audience questions. So the lots of questions and lots of overlaps in those questions. So I'm going to summarize that. One of the questions is on work from home. Okay, and I think a lot of people see work from home as becoming part of future reality, and so there are questions relating to how does this affect productivity overall, and how does this affect investments and future growth and everything else. So do you want to take a crack at it first, and then we will ask somebody else?
Sure. Madhu, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Madhu, before I answer that one, I'll just like to, I loved what Samir just quoted and on the previous notion. And there was a question right above that on blockchain and other things, and to the point that you guys were also making. I'd like to add 2 lines to that and then perhaps move on this one.
Definitely.
Gone are the days wherein we are looking at analytics as a function of algorithms or function of anything which is tech or statistics. Analytics in all right means has to today talk about the right formulation of the problem. If you cannot formulate the right problem, there is no point talking analytics at all, because there are enough technologies and enough implementations already out there in the market who solve it for you. But if you don't know what to use when, it's not worth it. Had this been a talk 6 years back, perhaps we were not that mature into saying that, hey, you know what, this is what an NLP will look like, or this is what we'll do in K-means and sentiment and so forth. The technology has evolved so much, the catalysts and platforms have evolved so much that today, I don't see a lot of even interviews for wannabes going in that direction where they should be preparing in spaces to tell how does this algorithm work, and then I'm a good analytics qualified, blah, blah, blah. It is all about problem formulation. If you can formulate and go in the right direction on the thesis, do the right hypothesis using n number of already available features, life is on there. There was a quotation written here, how do you use blockchain? Or how does analytics help blockchain and so forth? Now, blockchain is not the only one there. I'm not sure how many of in the group are following what Tangle is or what DAG does, but Tangle is already competing with blockchain, and 2 years back, life would have been different, but today you want to see it ahead of it. How do you put it? How do you put IoT or blockchain or Tangle to use is where analytics will come into the picture. An example on that is one of our very big clients with whom we are solving a problem of supply chain. Formulation is as simple as they want to make, and it's a very regional question, by the way, or basically a very society-oriented question, wherein for a particular population over globe, halal food is a necessity. And here is a problem formulation wherein they are looking at solving how to authenticate halal food that reaches the hands of consumers by knowing that from the point the source was originated to each and every touch point it has gone through is logged in and can be mapped. Now, solving a solution or building a solution to that, yes, can involve, it's a beautiful blockchain query. We are already doing it in blockchain and now moving it to Tangle, right? But that's engineering. Leave it to the engineers or leave it to the IT side of the function, while analytics and all things digital on top are about how do you make sense of it. Till the time we can drive there, there is enough in technology, enough in NLP, natural language processing, to AWS comprehend, all tools and technologies are there. But if you know how to use an NLP to say that, hey, this is what and where we can imply it, or this is how we can drive usage to analytics for, be it startup banks. Now startups are under, there is a different kind of a theory going on, Rao. So many new neo banks are targeting startups, right? Now, not that they are offering a completely different way of banking. What they're trying to do is differentiate themselves by the analytical decision making and features that they offer to make better decisioning happen for companies, which may be very, very closely monitoring their daily spends and giving them informative decisions on how similar companies or people or groups with similar budgets are going to tip in. One of the banks we are working with today wants a case which we are building for them on analytics, using analytics, is as simple as, can you tell me how many similar organizations in finance, similar to us, or working on a similar budget, are spending their current, what they have? Now, what that simply means from a product feature is, hey, why can't I offer all my companies of segment X and a predictive formulation guide on, hey, you are this, similar companies, just like a recommendation engine, similar companies with similar budgets are spending amount X into their HR today versus amount X into their supply chain, blah, blah, blah. That's analytical decision making where the world has to evolve and used to.
No, I think it's a great point, right? And, there are lots of questions I'm seeing on, algorithms that are being used and analytical tools. And I want to highlight that, each case might have a different algorithm and an analytical tool, but there has been so much work done in the last decade or so that these can be easily gathered from the web. And, I can answer these questions separately, but the point that Karan raised is, I think the world has moved from just trying to say what is the best algorithm out there. I'm not saying that there's not more research being done. There is a lot of research being done on developing, more efficient algorithms. But we have reached a stage where the current algorithms we have are really good at solving a lot of the problems we have. And that goes back to what everybody has been talking about, which is, now we're at the stage where we can actually problem solve using the tools that we have. Okay, so going back to that question, so work from home.
Yeah.
So, Karan, do you want to allow, say, maybe Sandeep or Samir or Aashish to answer that?
Sure.
So I can take the work from home. Definitely, now this is a new normal when we are saying that the work from home is going to stay forever. From the technology wise, we do not have any problem. I think in last 2 to 3 months, we realized that the productivity is also not a problem. In fact, in most of the cases, I realized that productivity has increased because there is a proper work-life balance fit where a lot of practitioners can do. Third is saving your basically commuting time. You don't have to stuck in the traffic and all those things. But I have a 2 point here, which I feel that we all have to see that it will basically how long it is going to be sustained. I'm talking to basically more than 1,000 practitioners, and initially their reaction was good. Okay, fine, we are happy working from home. But now slowly everyone is having the office sickness. They really want to go to office, meet their colleague and work. Because if you see, we all have the opportunity to do the distance learning from a school or college, but we went to school, we went to college, and we learned a lot. We basically enjoyed that experience. And after school, college, I think the third place where we really have the social circle and we are enjoying is our offices. So we all have to see that human will accept this work from home for long term or not. But from the technology wise, company wise, everyone is looking forward for this. And the benefit of working from home from technology perspective is tier 2, tier 3 cities. Because if someone wants to work from tier 2, tier 3 cities, they don't have to rush to tier 1 cities. They can work from there. That is the advantage.
No, and I think, you're mentioning some really good points. And I think, one of the things that I see is empowering women in the workforce also, right? India is one of the lowest participation of women in the workforce. And, for our country, we need everybody on deck. And I'm hoping that this work from home will also, empower us in that regards. So, Samir, there are questions directed at you. So there's one question which is asking at how HR domain can use analytics where in many where the company actually does not use much analytics at all, and then what should they be focusing on? So that's broadly the question.
So HR, Madhu, and I hope through that discussion I've not triggered a uproar within the HR community, because I've always been saying, look, being the face of the organization, the technology has to be permeated, embedded within that particular function. But the dichotomy is it's not happening. And the reason I say that, look, the way, and I think if we take a sum total of what everyone has said in the panel, the way we behave, the way we take decisions today have changed. But our archaic way of interviewing candidates, getting them through an assessment test, and then rejecting on the basis of a particular kind of a parameter, to me looks absolutely like circa 1940s, 50s. Got to change today. In this pandemic, if an organization wants to hire people, folks are not ready to come to the office or reluctant to come to the office. How do you do that? Now, one of the parameters is, okay, let's do a kind of a, let's say, just like a Zoom video, do a kind of a, let's say, interview, ask questions. If that particular day, that particular candidate has a good set of viewpoints, there you go. He or she gets selected. But I would go beyond. I would say, let's analyze her aspect about image, voice, text, and video in terms of moods, voice modulation, in terms of the facial expression. Are they matching with the narrative, what he or she is talking about in terms of the narrative? And if it does, which is where analytics comes into the picture, that particular person is in actually, because, and that's where the persona, because I know that one of our large IT company has a moodometer where employees, when they used to enter the turnstile, punching their cards and looking at the faces where the cameras were deployed, kind of a thing, the camera was able to pick up whether the employee is disgruntled, is happy, or kind of in a state of a kind of a shock and all, or it's a Monday blue, whatever. So they had those moodometers basis that the HR fraternity used to decide the spot or the pat on the back awards. Now realize in many of the organizations, the HR today are giving pat on the back awards ad hoc basis. There is a town hall, please come, we'll give you the awards. The CEO is in town, we'll give the award. Everything now will be data led, and the decision making in HR, right from what I say, attract part of the value chain to kind of retain, will be done through analytics. Now, for that to happen, a simple use case would be, as Karan also rightly said, analytics alone will not prove out to be what I say complete. It's a blend of analytics, data engineering capability, and behavioral kind of a science, because you got to have that nudge aspect built into that. You can build a great algorithm, but if you're not able to implement through a nudge, through a kind of what you say, a simplified design, it will lose that appeal. And that's what HR needs to do, whether compensation benchmarking. Work from home means every company is revisiting their project workflows. It has to be in smaller chunks, because we all realize if I have this discussion with you 2 hours, not only the participants lose the interest, I also feel absolutely fatigued out. Same is the case with the project. Can we automate the project workflows in smaller chunk, and basis how fast, how efficient, how effective an employee finishes through analytics kind of a screen, we get to know the compensation and the merit hikes of that individual up with the sum total. That means he or she is being evaluated on a real-time basis. Right. So biases in terms of a year-end merit hikes or year-end performance appraisal, because we all know it has a recency impact.
So thanks. I just wanted to add a little bit. I was just informed that we are also organizing a webinar purely on HR analytics on May 30th. So participants or people who are interested in that should definitely tune into that webinar.
One suggestion: get analytics professionals as well as HR heads. Let's see how the conversation goes. Just on a lighter vein.
So there's tons of questions, and we've just crossed our time. Is it okay with the panelists if we spend 10 more minutes on this? Is everybody okay?
Fine with me, Madhu.
Okay, yeah, sorry for going over time. So I'll just take a few more questions. So, the work from home that Aashish, sorry?
Yeah, no, I was just saying, sure, go ahead.
Okay. So, Aashish, this is a question directed at you. And, going back to that work from home option, right? So this is asking you a specific question on how much percentage of revenue margins improvement does TCS expect, with 75% of the workforce being on a work from home. And I'm guessing you really don't know, but you're expecting it will be more.
I can't share specifically what, but I can tell you the areas where there will be impact. Think about all the office space, which is very expensive, actually. When you look at the bottom line costs that are incurred by corporations just by having associates or employees in the offices, it adds up quite a bit. So if you have so much of workforce working from home, you save lots of money in all those office space costs. You save money also when you use video conferencing tools. So all the visas and travel, one of the jokes I often make is that my job is global CTO, which is Chief Travel Officer. Because I was traveling so much all over the world. I'm traveling so frequently, but that has changed now. Obviously, I'm doing a lot of my meetings through Zoom or video conferencing tools like Teams, which also works very well, by the way. Microsoft Teams has also great features that we discussed today. So we do a lot of that, and we see there's significant cost savings from the bottom line cost standpoint that will be a big impact from the EBITDA standpoint to the companies and corporations. So I believe that will be something companies that are established will realize that there will be cost reductions, and they will definitely be tempted to do it. But I also agree the point that someone made earlier. I think Sandeep made that point about how there will be fatigue coming in from folks who are working from home. In fact, there are some areas where people are saying, I don't want to work from home anymore. I need a break, because it's really more of a social engagement also, not just working. So they need it out. And I'm not just talking about men. I'm talking men, women, everybody. They need a break from the family. They want to be away for a few hours in a day. So there may be a time when work from home becomes reality, but those folks might step out and work from Starbucks to do their calls and everything. And so we will see how the whole field matures over time. I expect a lot happening in that space now. You have seen the stock market responding to how the work from home has evolved over time. They are up to the roof. Some of the stocks are, Zoom being one of them. So I think we'll see how the maturation comes into play with terms of these areas, and definitely see the impact of that.
Yeah, thanks. There were lots of questions on continuous learning and, how we must adapt. And, this is just broadly from my perspective as an educator. I think, we should all be learning to learn. And that's what we should be focusing on. The world is changing so much and so fast that we should be open to new technologies. And, we do have our core strengths. Some people are better at decision making than others are. Some people understand the business a lot more. And if you're able to integrate that core aspect of yours with new learning from technology and how to use it, I think that's the path to success. Everybody can't start off programming in Python or learning Tangle, but you should learn how to use Tangle at least and get the best benefit out of it.
Professor Madhu, I
I like to add something. This is Aashish.
Yeah.
I like to add that learning to learn is essential. I think everybody should use this opportunity to learn, but learning to unlearn is also very important, because we have certain set of ways of doing things. I think unlearning that and then relearning becomes very critical. And I'll also advise everyone to start thinking about having your own network of mentors. I think it's helped me. I think it helps everybody to create that mentorship group who you can look up to. Where do you want to be in next 5-10 years? And then find that person and then find a way to be able to get that ongoing channel from mentorship standpoint. So you can continuously learn and see how the progress goes. So that's something I wanted to add as well.
Thanks, Ali. Now, there was questions on supply chains, and some of the questions were, how do you react when the reaction times now have become a lot less? How can analytics help in that regard? Because people are supply chains need to respond to sudden onset of, say, a red zone. It just changes overnight. So how do you react to those? Sonny, do you want to take a crack at it?
Sure, I'll take a case in point and take a very elevated situation on supply chain, Madhu. In fact, there are a couple of organizations, including us, who are working with a very large organization I can't name, which is into shipping. Now, the factors over there, we all know that today oil prices have really hit rock bottom. To the extent it's almost like a hazard to carry oil because there aren't enough kind of buyers for that. Now, in a typical, all across the globe, in any situation, across the whole kind of a shorelines and all the kind of, let's say, traffic of fleets, what we have in the ship, at any given point of time, there are 6,000 heavy vehicles which actually take oils from one place to another. 6,000. At this stage, coupled with the pandemic, there are 70,000 vessels all across the globe which are actually not getting permission by any ports because they can't dump the oil because there are no takers. And if I give the collective kind of a, let's say, amount, what the kind of oil they are holding is more than the GDP of India. That's the kind of, let's say, quantum of oil we're talking about. Now, supply chain wise, the problem is, as the easing of this lockdown happens across countries, where all these fleet of ships should be navigated to kind of optimize their route, because they're running out of the fuel also because they have to get all those replenishments and also dock the oil in the right place. Now, this cannot be just kind of a situation which can be solved by one simple optimization scheduler. Can't happen. And it has components of socioeconomic factors, the supply chain from, let's say, the time they started, the time they should land, and everything. So it's huge proportion. So in fact, and that's where there are 4 companies which are working on this initiative. They are trying to create a new algorithm which talks about a complete new supply chain optimization schedule for these 70,000 vessels. Now, of course, this is still work in progress, but I just want to give one kind of an instance how today companies are looking at leveraging an analytics AI, because that's a core part of our theme, in terms of really kind of solving large complex, and it's a global supply chain issue, what we're talking about in this. Right. So I just wanted to pause over there because this is still work in progress.
Okay. All right, so I had other questions. One was on education that I will take answer separately. So what about thoughts on how people should prepare for the future? Because there are lots of questions on how people should also train themselves for the future. What kind of analytics should they be doing? Should they focus on one particular aspect of analytics? Should it be business and then analytics implied? So what are your thoughts on that? Sandeep, do you want to start first?
Sure, Madhu. In terms of learning or focusing on analytics space, like we discussed few times, that knowing algorithm is not a big deal now anymore. Maybe 4 to 5 years back it was, but now I think we have to start focusing on how to solve the business problem. And everyone is looking for how AI, how analytics can solve my problem in terms of decision making or increasing my productivity or efficiency. So whenever we are learning anything in terms of analytics, I think we have to keep this in mind. Another pattern I have seen is when we learn about analytics, we forget about data, understanding the data, preparation of data. Right, please do not leave that, because data is the backbone of everything, and it will basically empower you to take or create the right analytic solution for your client. Few areas which I feel that is nowadays everyone has to start thinking is, and I feel that in future the zero touch engineering will take lot of places. Everyone is looking for zero touch. We will see the buildings where the zero touch will be there. We are almost talking about the zero touch supply chain and all those things. Um, so this is the interesting area where world is going to ask a lot of solutions about the zero touch, and IoT will also change the shape, because a lot of basically biosensors will be inbuilt in IoT, and when you will travel to mall or train or airport, your temperature will be measured. Other parameters are also going to be measured, and lot of lot of analytics are going to be required in that space. So these are the basic fundamentals I feel that which every student or people who want to grow in analytics space should keep in mind.
Okay. Samir, quick thoughts? Maybe we lost him. Oh, okay, there we go. Samir, just quick thoughts on what you think people should focus on. Anything to add besides what Sandeep has said? Samir, you're on mute, so we can't hear you.
My bad, actually. So it's a good time, Madhu, to actually, as other panel members said, to kind of really unlearn and really relearn. Good part is that the government has really listened to many of us. They've opened up an option for the students or any professional to pursue a second degree, a second course, which is very good, and it has to be an online. So it's a blend of both online and actually the classic education. Second, it never stops, because every 2 years the technologies, the learning will go for a chain. So will be the careers. Outside of the conceptual learning, whether it's a data understanding or the algorithm understanding, tools, techniques, frameworks, one needs to build a contextual learning. Now, the sum total of the reflection of this entire panel members, if we take, all of them talked about the use cases and industry relevance. And that comes in when you start understanding, start getting your hands dirty. Now, having said that, it's not that one needs to necessarily have a professional experience. Of course, that aids, but you take up the 5 problems of a particular industry, insurance, healthcare, CPG, looks at how kind of, let's say, it can be solved through analytics. Go on the Kaggle, GitHubs, there are scores of problems over there. Build your own score. The moment you have a score over there, gives you a possible edge amongst many other students who are still figuring out. So I believe a conceptual and contextual learning is the way to go on this.
Great point. And, highlighting the Kaggle and other websites where there are these analytical challenges out there for people to, showcase their talent and also learn is just a great point. Any last thoughts? Aashish, Karan?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, no, this is. I think. Go ahead, Karan.
Thanks, Aashish. Yeah, I mean, overall, from a learning perspective and where to go from here, there are enough. We are seeing a trend even on our LinkedIn timelines where everybody is showcasing and highlighting this certification plus 10 other certifications, whatever we put on board. The value proposition has to be on the understanding of that side as to how are you rating it versus making use of it in the right scheme of things. Like Sameer pointed out, Kaggle and other platforms that do exist, it is about what you can consume and showcase you did on top, which is a larger learning experience than, I would say, plain old just a certification without your value proposition or point of view on top of it. So the more you can play with live data and implement and just like they said, prototype something, which you might think might not be eventually immediately useful, but the fact that you have played around and done something meaningful, which may have insights today or in a different form for some other perspective or business later, is much more relevant than just going only by the textbook. Going by the textbook is a good starting point, but till the time you build the right context on it, you know how to connect the dots to use it. That's where the real differentiator will happen.
Thanks, Karan. Aashish?
Thanks. Yeah, I think I'd like to share what Eric Schmidt says. Eric Schmidt, as many in the audience would know, is the chairman at Google and has been the CEO at Google for the longest time. And he teaches at Stanford. And he says that you make those behavioral changes, and we know behavioral changes are coming. For instance, he says switch from TV to YouTube. And by that, he means to say that there's so much to learn on YouTube, it's free. You could just go in there and start learning and seeing how the fundamentals are done. And I continue emphasizing on fundamentals because many times people get lost into the fancy stuff of AI with algorithms and deep learning and multiple phases of AI, but they forget that the data architecture, which is fundamental to that, is still broken for many organizations. So if you just look into fundamentals and work your way up from there, that becomes very critical. Behavioral changes are coming in terms of work from home. What does that mean? In terms of analytics, even hiring. I mean, there are startups that I know who are leveraging analytics to do hiring, where you could actually look at multiple sources of data to find better hires. So all of these different avenues are coming our way. Can we use that data and work on, leveraging it and being able to create something? You never know. We might be able to come up with an idea that we can start our own company. So there's so much opportunity that comes with this, as we discussed today, that it's just great to be there. Of course, under the circumstances where coronavirus has got so much pain in the world, I think it's also brought some opportunity for those who are trying to learn and grow.
Thanks, Aashish. Sameer, did you want to say something?
So I think over there, just very briefly, Madhu, I think it's a time for introspection for all of us, be it we are students or working professionals or potential kind of aspirants to get into industry. Models have really got deconstructed because of this pandemic. But what's important is, yes, the short-term impact will be more on a downhill side, but there is a pent-up demand. There is a way where we've come out of all these black swan events earlier. But analytics, if you see, the reason we are always bullish about this industry, it's not a new industry. It's been there for 20 years from MIS. It has gone to a genre of AI today. Decision making, we all talked about thing. I mean, algorithms, while it's already embedded, are changing the businesses today. From a learning side, I think I agree, don't get besotted by tools technology, because if today there is a GAN or a kind of a CNN or RNN kind of, let's say, technique, there is a Snowflake also. An open source kind of a containerization, self-service AI will be the game of the tomorrow, which means the focus will be on the art of problem solving, and more importantly is how you actually have your own disposition and demeanor to demonstrate that, and that will actually score, which means the moment you are able to contextualize what's happening in the world and relate to the problem that you're solving, I think that's what employers and the organizations would like to see.
Thanks, Sameer. Sandeep, last words. You're on mute, Sandeep.
Sorry. We all knew that every company is a technology company. And being a technology company, everyone is capturing the data from years and years. And the single IT basically asset, if we will say, that is data. Now in the second stage, everyone want to monetize those data. And when you have to monetize your data, analytics comes in the picture. As everyone mentioned, that tools and technology will change. The asking and the expectation of analytics will change, but analytics is going to be in huge demand because of cost pressure, better decision making, you name anything, and analytics and data will help to achieve that objective. Second point, which we spoke about, the behavior. Yes, behavior has to be changed because world situation is keep changing. Organizations objectives are keep changing, and that's why the Fortune 500 companies, basically in every 3 or 4 years, 70% Fortune 500 companies changed and new companies take place. And third important aspects for all the students is, tomorrow you are going to work with not only human, but you are going to work with machine also. So it's a age of with. So far we have seen all the Hollywood film, man versus machine, but the era is coming, man with machine, humans with machine. So that's my last thought, that this is the phase we will pass, but yes, there is a lot of tremendous opportunity in future. We can see that.
Thank you all. This was a great session. I don't know about the audience, but I really had a great time. There were lots of good insights, and I'll probably connect with you guys privately also to get more of those insights. So thank you all, and thanks for the audience for staying on. Hopefully you learned something from this. Now there are a lot of questions that were left unanswered. I'll try to answer as much as I can, and then like I mentioned before, we will collate and give you a summary of the discussion we've had also, and hopefully that will be of use to you. Thanks everybody. Stay safe.